Alrighty, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, I suppose, depending on where you're dialing in from, and welcome to today's webinar, The Importance of Digital Analytics Architecture and Tag Management, presented to you by InfoTrust. Thanks everybody for joining. Really excited to have you here today to go through this topic together. A few logistical items before we jump in. This webinar should last 30-45 minutes, hopefully with some time for questions. But of course, if you have any comments, questions, or contributions, feel free to post in the chat pane or in the questions panel for the GoToWebinar portal. I will be monitoring those as I go through this webinar, but I'm also only moderating myself. But feel free to share anything you'd like here. Of course, this webinar is being recorded, and the slides and recording will both be shared with you if you've registered on our website for this webinar today. I guess without further ado, we'll get started. So today's topic is on the importance of digital analytics, architecture, and tag management. My name is Amin Shaki. I'm the Regional Managing Director at InfoTrust. We're a US-based web analytics consulting and product development company. We do these types of webinars and educational programs all the time. Every week we have several free webinars, so I encourage you to check out our website for upcoming webinars. We do events, training programs, and beyond just training and education, we also do any kind of consulting around web analytics for our different customers. So from strategy, measurement planning, architecture design for digital analytics, as well as implementation, testing, validation. We also do optimization, reporting, analysis, things at the tail end as well after you have the digital analytics architecture in place. As you can see, we're very close partnered with Google. We have several certifications such as Google Analytics, Google Tag Manager, as well as now Data Studio and Optimize, our whole GA360 suite. So as an organization, we work often with Google as well as large enterprises to build out architecture, set up digital analytics, best practices and tracking, and then continuously support these organizations to really leverage the data and analytics setup that has been accomplished. As far as the topic for today, the agenda that we put together here, we'll first cover some of the key concepts when thinking about a digital analytics architecture. From our experience working with some of the largest companies in the world in the CPG, FMCG, or multi-brand, multi-site platform, as well as e-commerce, retail, news and media, we've seen really complex digital setups or digital landscapes within different organizations. So we're going to talk about some of the key concepts and learnings that we have working with these different organizations when you're thinking about what is a good architecture that's not only going to fulfill the business needs, but also be sustainable for future growth, future changes that might happen in your organization. We're going to talk a little bit about tag management systems specifically, also for multi-site, multi-brand organizations, and how this has transformed the practice of digital analytics and how the architecture is much different when you're using a tag management system and how you can work with that. Then we're going to talk about some of the best practices for selecting web analytics and tag management tools. I can't say I'm not biased, or we're not biased towards Google products, of course, because we're such close partners with Google, but hopefully this webinar will be more about general items to consider or to work with your teams internally to put together as far as requirements and the process to actually building an architecture and selecting a tag management tool. Then we're just going to quickly wrap up with some case studies and examples of, with a good architecture, some of the innovative things that can come out of that, some of the integrations and insights that you can glean when you connect your different systems together. And then, of course, hopefully leave you with some takeaways on what you can do to actually get started, either rebuilding your digital analytics architecture across your organization or building a new architecture for your company. Hopefully we'll give you some tips and tricks and tools to get started. So let's talk about some key concepts. First, to start with some of the challenges with analytics in general. We work with a lot of organizations that have so many different systems, so many different teams, all working in different directions. So there's oftentimes too much going on at the same time, or too much data to know what to do with at all. So the goal with this presentation is to not give you a list of 100 things to think about, but really the key things when you're building an architecture, because sometimes less is more, which is interesting to say from an analytics perspective, but sometimes too much can be less productive. Some other challenges that we've heard from our clients and from organizations that we begin working with resemble these here, where there's not enough support or sustainable processes in place. Everyone's trying to move very, very quickly and do things that are short and easy, so there's nothing really sustainable or that can be a strong foundation. Unifying technologies and databases can be difficult. There's lots of different parties at play. People are protective of their data, and how do you build a community of data sharing yet still keep it secure and integrate everything properly? Lack of strategy and actually what to do with the data once you have it. A lot of organizations we begin working with track everything just for the sake of tracking everything in case someone will need it in the future. We've noticed that this is not always the best use of time or energy or money and cost to implement everything under the sun, because there's only key performance indicators, KPIs, or some key metrics that would really drive the business forward. Everything else might just be additional supplementary items that can come later. But often the strategy initially and the measurement planning, it's what's lacking there. And then, of course, ongoing projects, prioritizing, and analytics not being top. Particularly, this comes into play because digital analytics and building an architecture requires a lot of IT work, IT team, and developers and IT systems or IT teams are always under-resourced or just have too many tasks and projects assigned to them. So we're going to talk a little bit, particularly in the tag management sector, how this can be alleviated with some of the techniques that we're going to be talking about when thinking how to build an architecture for analytics. A few points to consider are these things that we consider when we're working with different organizations to build out their analytics architecture, or at least audit what their architecture looks like and if it's really serving the purposes of that organization. We think about all the different ways consumers can interact with the brand or the organization. So not just digitally always, but offsite or via marketing tools online that are not owned by the organization. So not just websites or mobile apps, but different social channels or different touch points that consumers can engage with, because having a clear idea of the full landscape will help you understand what type of connections need to be made and what type of technologies could serve that purpose. Along with the touch points where consumers can interact, what information about those consumers or those interactions are important, which ones can actually drive action. So again, when we're working with organizations that want to understand and collect everything about everything, all of their mobile app touch points or interactions, all of their website buttons and widgets and all this good stuff, really, what are the key items that would be able to be assessed, analyzed, and drive action? Those are the ones that we need to focus on first. So conversion data, purchase data, user data to understand your consumer and where to target them. Those are the key items first, so prioritize those when you're thinking about building an architecture. When we roll out analytics across organizations, we really try hard to not do everything all at once, because that would be a very long and time-intensive and resource-intensive project. We break it out and prioritize the different requirements or data that's needed into phases. So that's something that might be worth considering. Of course, where you'll store your data, what type of technology could work in your organization. Do you have flexible compliance, or is it very locked down? You need your own servers and databases, et cetera. And then how do you plan on analyzing your data? Do you have in-house teams that are dedicated to analysis? You have analysts and data scientists, or do you just have marketing teams that need quick information, very clear insight, don't have a lot of time to analyze, that could also have an impact on what type of architecture you build and how much time you put up front into setting it all up. And then how do you plan on optimizing? So what type of actions, again, can be taken from the different KPIs that you'll be tracking. If you work for an organization that happens to be an enterprise or very large, you'll understand a lot of these needs. But from our experience working with very large organizations, but even small, fast-moving, very innovative organizations have similar needs where not only do you need more robust data collection and reporting capabilities, but also simple tools, quick actions, and insights that can be gleaned. So wanted to summarize some of the requirements that come from digital analytics, almost so that you as you're considering how to build a digital analytics architecture or why it's important, you can have these as kind of selection criteria or things to keep in mind. What is the user access or permissions across these different tools? And once the data is flowing, how can people actually reach those insights? Is there support? How do they merge with other tools that we have? How do they integrate, etc.? These are just different needs and considerations to keep in mind when you're building out your digital analytics architecture. When we think of what a digital analytics architecture is, we come back to this definition, which is wordy, but it's something that our team internally has preached before. We have a couple team members at InfoTrust that are also professors within local universities, particularly in our US office. And this is their textbook definition of a digital analytics architecture. To summarize it, it's the tools and structure that allows data collection and analysis to be performed in order to optimize your marketing decisions or other business decisions and drive more value in your company. So an architecture, a good digital analytics architecture is meant to be robust yet cost-effective, comprehensive as far as data collection, but simple to use. So it has all of these different characteristics with it. Now, a lot of people would think they have an analytics architecture in place when they just have Google Analytics deployed on their website. But just having Google Analytics deployed in the most basic form is not really an architecture because it's not sustainable, might not be very robust, might not be simple to use if it's not constructed in a way that's very customized for your business and your specific attributes. It might take a while to actually dig to get those insights that you're looking for. So an architecture is when you take in all the different components and tools and systems and you build an approach that collects just your key attributes in a way that's presentable for your business. So hopefully that makes sense as far as high level what a digital analytics architecture is. If there's one or two slides to walk away from, this might be one of them, which again we'll be sharing out the presentation and recording with you. But this is just a checkpoint or checklist of things to look for when you're building a sustainable digital analytics architecture. So if you're working internally with a team to assess your own architecture currently, or what are the steps you need to take to rebuild it, this is what we follow. So first, for any kind of enterprise, we need to build an inventory of the sites, brands, markets, platforms that are being used or that are available for consumers to interact with, the consumer touch points, and how are they being tracked today? Are they being tracked at all? Is there anything that is being actively used by those teams as far as the data? What should we keep? What should we remove? What should we enhance? This is all part of building that inventory of the setup that you have. Not only from an analytics like your analytics tool and the data that's collected, but other tags, pixels, third-party technologies that you might have deployed. What are they? How are they deployed? Is it efficient? Is it compliant? We'll get into a little bit more about tag management here in the next section, but this is what building an inventory is all about. The next thing you want to ask is, in your organization, are you looking to have a centralized management of your digital analytics, deployment, architecture, reporting, etc.? Or is it going to be decentralized at the brand, site, or team level? Now, there can be a mix of both. And again, I can't say that there's one size fits all for every organization, but from our experience, the more efficient, yet sometimes more time-consuming, is to have a central managed approach. But that way, any kind of compliance you might have in your organization is followed very well, as well as consistency across different brands, sites, and markets, because without having a centralized approach to what you're collecting, how you're collecting it, what tools you're using, different brands, different teams might be looking at the same data or even slightly different data and coming up with different insights. And then there's no way to really reconcile or understand true performance across your business and where to invest time, energy, money, and really analyze correctly. So from a multi-site, multi-brand perspective, typically a centralized approach where you have one technology, one deployment, and even a single deployment team that works with all brands and markets and site owners, if you will, or app owners. That typically works, though there is some delays where the site or app owners might want to move quickly, but the central team has to understand if it's worth scaling out to all the brands, all the teams, all the markets, or just deploying or not deploying it at all because it's not uniformly advantageous. Now, decentralization does allow you to move quicker, of course, with deployment, but again, if you ever need to do any kind of reconciliation or benchmarking against other teams, organizations, and efforts happening in your business, it might not be possible very easily. Sometimes a mix of both works, though, where you could have a pilot implementation where one brand is leading. They try out new techniques, new data collection, new reporting tools and systems, and if it works, all the other brands follow suit. As long as there's that approach, and that's what we also do with a lot of our organizations, that could work as well. The rest kind of fall into place what I was just describing, but having a uniform strategy for data collection is usually a best practice. So from a technical perspective, having a single data layer or at least list of attributes that you can track across every single platform as much as you can. Of course, there are certain things that can be tracked on like mobile apps, like crashes that cannot be tracked on websites. Websites don't often crash like apps might crash, or they're just different types of crashes. But essentially, the thought here is when you're trying to think about digital analytics architecture, don't only think about your one key platform. Think about all of your platforms, but think about your key attributes or key data things that you would need to track to really drive performance. Make sure it's sustainable, and I'll talk a little bit about what sustainability means in the next section. But to summarize it, it's something that would not only be managed by one person or all the knowledge lives in one area of your business. It can be picked up and simple for multiple teams and organizations to understand, leverage, and manage if needed throughout time, but yet robust enough that it still serves the purposes or the needs for your business. I put in here complexity kills because oftentimes when we work with organizations that want to use a tag management system or want to deploy really advanced analytics architectures, they don't care how, they just want the data now. So they would try and do all sorts of shortcuts and custom integrations and lots of custom coding, especially in the tag management systems, versus using simplified templates or cleaner architecture because it might take a little bit longer time to fully deploy. But that's not sustainable. After a couple months, let's say one of your head developers that rolled this out leaves the organization, then you're stuck having to rebuild or understand what was done previously. And lots of things can break. It's very risky to build things very customized within a tag management system or using custom code and shortcuts. Really thinking about sustainability and having multiple owners or at least multiple people that understand the setup can be useful. Data democratization, how is your analytics architecture going to be adopted? So again, this comes back to the notion where if you try to track everything under the sun, it might not be exactly what people want to use. If you focus on the key things that everyone will need access to or need to use, get those deployed first, get that win, get some trust within your organization, to use this analytics architecture and tool and processes, then you can layer on much easier, much quicker. We recently just rolled out an analytics architecture with an organization that has many different platforms and hundreds of different attributes they needed to collect. But really the core for buy-in from all their markets or regional teams was just conversion tracking, was just a completed order or purchase tied to their marketing advertising. That was the core. That was enough for them to understand, yes, we can make decisions off of our analytics tool. So getting that focus and deploying that first built all sorts of trust. So now more questions are coming in like, well, can we do this now? Can we do this? And teams understand that not everything can be available upfront initially, but giving them something that's very critical first builds that trust, builds that sense of, okay, let's see what else we can build on top of this foundation. So it's almost like a rollout thing, give the teams some access early on to the key items because it'll make it easier to build up from there. And then always keeping in mind when you're building out your analytics, what kind of support, enhancements, training, and innovation processes will you have in place? It's worth thinking about this up front because, again, similar to the sustainability component here, if you build out something very quickly just to solve a current need, there's no ongoing support enhancements, then without constant reminders for the team and re-educating and showing them the value for your organization, it won't be sustainable. Things will go all over the place, or the tool and investment would be just abandoned. So a lot of times with our clients, we do rolling training programs where we share updates with the products or just new ways, new tips and tricks to analyze so that it keeps people engaged throughout. So hopefully this was a good background on just some of the key concepts when looking for a digital analytics architecture. I'll show some specifics on tools and data flow and the structures here in the next section, which we're going to talk about using tag management systems and really addressing multi-brand, multi-site architecture needs. So with lots of lots of organizations we start working with, there's technologies all over the place and data all over the place as well. And when they're siloed off, not interconnected, it's very inefficient. So this is just a quick visual that we put together. I have a more robust one here in a few slides, just to show all of the inputs, from your marketing or media side of the business, all of the different things that you can be tracking or seeing, as well as on the other side, your customer data, your relationship management system, and all of your backend CRM information, as well as all of your platforms, your consumer touchpoints. If they don't interconnect beyond just a handoff of information, there's no back and forth, and it's inefficient. But when you integrate technologies together, new possibilities can open up. Now, what I wanted to show this slide for is the key concept here that for most organizations, B2B or B2C, or B2C or B2B, I should say, having your consumer as the focal point is what we would recommend. So any type of business ultimately has users that are coming from a digital analytics perspective or digital marketing perspective. So organizing all of your structure and all of your technologies and tools to focus around that consumer is key to build these integrations and unlock new possibilities. Very low level, what this means is if you can track users at the user level, that's the approach that we would recommend. So in any of your marketing activities or your backend user data sets, which is obviously at the user level, connecting that with your systems tied to a user, which typically means with a user ID. That user ID that unifies all of your systems together can allow you to take information from one platform or one silo, if you will, and use it to enhance a completely other side of the spectrum here. So you can take information from your CRM system, ERP, or just user data sets and customize an audience to display media to, specifically related to information you have about them from a different side of the business. And connecting all of this together heavily relies on having a clean architecture where you can build those bridges. So I mentioned user ID as a specific attribute, but even beyond user ID, you need the technology and the architecture at the consumer touchpoint level to be able to export data outward as well as import data inward and merge it with the different types of information that you might be collecting. So, of course, again, we're biased here. I have even Google Analytics on the screen. Google products do this very well with integrations. They're all about exporting and allowing APIs to bring data in and out of their systems. So we typically push for Google Analytics and Google Tag Manager as these tools because they allow pretty open data connectivity between different systems. What I wanted to show here is just a typical ecosystem from lots of our clients and potentially in organizations you work with. The complexity of your digital ecosystem might resemble what's shown here. You can see that there's, again, all of the marketing or media platforms on the far left. Then you have your user data sets or other applications here on the far right. And then the consumer touchpoints or the online presence here that rolls in the middle. But the key takeaway that I want to have with this slide is just to show you the value with tag management because it brings together your online presence or your digital touchpoints. All that data can be organized and aggregated together using a tag management system to enhance everything else in this entire ecosystem. So even if right now with your organization you have multiple sites, multiple brands, multiple teams, all with different tracking capabilities or different attributes that are set up right now, and some are more sophisticated than others, and some teams are moving faster than others, etc. The one unifying technology can be your tag management system. So getting all of your entire organization on a single tag management system platform allows you that capability to unify it all together, potentially do some cleaning or organization so that you have that sustainable architecture or data set up in analytics. Of course, we would argue, and I'm going to talk about here in a few slides, the process of implementing this tag management system on your online tools. There is a special way to do it. It's not just deploy and then you're good. Deploying it with the clean structure that's uniform across all these platforms is key. And that's where the next best practices come in. So let me continue. Again, to take a step back, I guess, on the tag management systems, what they are and what they do, they help you streamline deployments and management of your online technologies across your digital platforms. Tags or pixels are just ways to collect data off of your platforms for analytics systems or advertising systems, et cetera. And a tag management system allows you to manage those better. So it gives you more control about what's being deployed, how it's being deployed, and what it's collecting, the data flow between your platforms and those systems. And it lets you really centralize management. Again, back to a couple slides where we would recommend, if possible, doing a centralized management of your analytics architecture. This is where tag management is key. I took a couple slides from our Tag Inspector team. For those of you that might not know, Tag Inspector is a data validation technology that helps deploy or build up architectures, or at least validate and monitor your architecture is continuously tracking data properly. I took a slide from some of their webinars and content just to show a little bit why to use tag management systems and the value propositions. What it comes down to is standardized collection of data, clean and uniform approach, as well as more control and compliance can really be managed all through a tag management system. Ultimately, it does help you deploy things faster, even if it takes some time to get everything rolled out across your systems. The long-term value and cost savings is high, especially for those IT teams or development teams that have too much on their plate and might be not able to prioritize marketing needs or marketing technology deployments. So these are just some of the reasons why to use a tag management system. When you use a tag management system, you should always use a data layer approach for capturing attributes. So this is a key component of building out your digital analytics architecture is having a data layer. What a data layer is, it's essentially a way to organize information on your digital platforms or assets, where the information is coming from your backend systems like your user database, CRM, CMS, etc., your website or app, but it organizes it in a single object or location on your website or app so that it's very uniform, clean, and structured. So when a tag management system grabs that data, it can pass it to any other marketing technology in the exact same way. There's no customizations needed to grab data from different parts of the site or different parts of the app or different sections of a page. It's organized all in one single way for you so that it's very, very consistent. All the attributes are exactly the same for different users, for different regions, markets, etc. And it allows you to pass that information out to your analytics systems in an organized and uniform way. So the data layer is very key. We actually have, as a shameless plug, various webinars about the data layer. So taginspector.com/events. This is where you can see more about validating or understanding the data layer and how to do that with Tag Inspector as well. So highly recommend checking out those webinars, as well as our past webinars if you want to learn more about what is a data layer, best practices, and even advanced uses of rolling out a data layer across your site or app or organization. Now, as far as analytics goes, once you're convinced that you need a tag management system, what I wanted to show are just some examples of clean and organized approaches for tracking. What I'm showing here is based off of Google Analytics and any tag management system, but typically we say Google Tag Manager is the best. Even if you have multiple platforms, multiple divisions, multiple sites, etc., one way to implement everything in an organization is to aggregate all the data collection using a tag management system on these different platforms and pass it all into a single property. So for example, if you are an organization that has an iOS application, has an Android application, and maybe you have two different websites, one for B2C customer, like you sell directly to customers, and then one you sell your product to businesses directly, hypothetically. You can have individual instances of Tag Manager or your tag management system on all of these platforms, but collect the data all at a single point into one property, and such as a Google Analytics property or account, because from there you can always segment it back out or see it all combined. So this is really valuable when you're trying to see overall health of your business or organization, or still allow segmentation to drill down into each individual type or platform that you might have. Now, it is maybe more known now, but recently it wasn't very commonly known that you can combine app data, mobile application data with web data together and see it in a master aggregated view or section, as well as across different markets. So that's where this next slide comes in here. For a multi-site, multi-brand organization, we always recommend having multiple markets aggregated together and collected at a single point or a shared account, shared property, because then you can do all sorts of benchmarking and see the overall health of our organization versus just one particular brand or market or team specifically. But again, you can split and filter out the data across different slices or segments as you need. All of these capabilities are available in Google Analytics and most analytics tools and platforms out there. And for sure, with tag management systems, you can be confident that between a tag management system and using the data layer, the data you collect will be in a clean, uniform way that when it hits the brand property, it's not like combining two different types of metrics together and getting jumbled, disoriented data. You can clean it up at the point of collection so that when it's output in the reports and when users are actually leveraging the data, it makes sense. So a tag management system and data layer can help clean that. Okay, so let's talk about some best practices for selecting software. Bringing back the same slide here, because I think this is, again, a checklist of things to consider when you're looking for a tag management system. So building that inventory, understanding how your management style is within your organization, confirming when if a tag management system can allow uniform strategy and data collection. Is it sustainable, meaning simple with a lot of vendor support potentially, or just a public ecosystem that allows you to really understand how to use the tool. It's not overly complex tool, or requires heavy coding and custom JavaScripting to deploy, and can more people access it. So again, when we think about this list here, being biased, I'm admitting up front, Google Tag Manager addresses all of these points, including if you're an enterprise, it has an SLA with its premium version or its 360 enterprise version. But probably the biggest thing is that because it's a free product, because it's provided by Google, there's a community around Google Tag Manager. There's partners like us, as well as people out online writing about how to use Google Tag Manager, ways to set it up, answering questions, and making sure it's really simple and easy for people to grasp and deploy and ultimately manage. We often see that organizations that have had Adobe tag management system or other tag management systems and analytics software, there's only a core small group of people that might understand how to use the technology, and then the technology is just ultimately not used and kind of dies out within the organization. So having more people access to it, even if that means more simple and focused at first, is definitely the best way to go when thinking about a long-term approach to your strategy. From our friends at Tag Inspector, or our team at Tag Inspector, they put together this visual for how to best perform tag management. Again, tag management and digital analytics architecture are interlinked. They're very much the same, because doing your analytics deployment and data collection is tag management. Once you actually get to the reporting and building out dashboards or custom segments for people to actually use in the interfaces themselves, that goes a little bit beyond the deployment perspective. But when you're building a digital analytics architecture, this is the process that we would recommend. So again, building that inventory, defining your goals, performing an audit, understanding what you have, but then putting in place a policy, because oftentimes if your organization has been using a tag management system or deployed it within IT, and they gave some access to marketing, but there wasn't a really clear strategy or understanding what was needed and how, there might be all sorts of things set up within your tag management system, and it might be all over the place, potentially even causing harm to your site or app from a performance perspective. So building a policy about what's allowed, what's not allowed, because some things you'll need, like your analytics system, but maybe you don't need anything else, you don't even know it's there. So building a policy and having that architecture in place for what attributes you need, what key attributes you need, and how. This is where you can then use our technology, Tag Inspector, shameless plug, to scan and understand what's in place, what needs to be removed or adjusted, and then continuously validate and get alerted if there's anything not working properly or not deployed, or deployed that shouldn't be deployed as well. Different attributes that might be out of place or not tracked properly, or different tags and pixels that might be all over the place. So Tag Inspector is where, and this tag management methodology is how you can clean up if you're at a point where you're not looking to initially build your architecture, but clean up and assess your architecture. This methodology and our tool can help build that inventory for you and understand what needs to be optimized. As far as selection considerations, again, taking this from our team at Tag Inspector, they put together some quick questions to ask yourself and ask your organization. Who's going to be managing the tags? What is the performance of your platforms? Is that the reason you want to adopt a tag management system? Are you already using any technologies now? Like if you're already using Google Analytics and DoubleClick, Google Tag Manager makes sense because there's built-in integrations, all provided by Google. If you happen to be using Adobe Analytics, maybe Adobe's tag management system makes more sense. Whatever might be the easiest to roll out and deploy. And then consider the resources, internally and externally, with the tool or technology that you use. Here's a couple tools that we've used before in the past. Again, Google Tag Manager, we're partners. We used to be partners with Telium and Insighten, both actually. They're both very powerful tools, very robust. We will say that because their businesses originally were all about tag management, potentially over-engineered and more complex, perhaps your organization needs more complexity or more engineering-backed type of product, where Google Tag Manager, again, in true Google fashion, is more about wider use, simplicity, and agility, yet still have the robustness and sustainability for enterprise needs. A lot of our enterprise organizations are actually moving away from Adobe, Insighten, or Telium, and even Signal to Google Tag Manager, not only because it's free, even the paid version is cheaper, but because there's so much external support. There's partners, there's forums, there's ways to handle or learn about Google Tag Manager that these other technologies might not have quite as robust. They don't have the community or education platforms quite as robust as Google Tag Manager. And then there's a few other smaller ones to keep in mind as far as the players in the industry. Okay, so hopefully this was helpful introduction to analytics architecture, key concepts, using tag management systems, best practices for selecting. I'm going to go through a couple of like use cases and just other things to keep in mind that you can leverage if you get a good architecture in place to wrap it up, and then some of our approaches to leave you with a takeaway, I guess, on how to get started. So if you've ever joined our webinars before, you might have seen this example because we're really proud about this client and partnership that we had. To summarize it shortly, Pelican Water Systems sells products online and offline, and they had no visibility into digital activities driving offline sales. So what we did was come in understanding their system, built an inventory of what they're tracking online, what platforms they're using online, what platforms they're using to track offline sales and interactions salespeople have with customers that actually close deals, and then understand, okay, are there integrations possible to uncover the digital performance on offline sales? Turns out yes, and it would not have been possible without Google Tag Manager and a tag management system as a central point for data collection online and passing it to those backend systems. But also just with Google Analytics, without having the measurement protocol capability with Google Analytics, we could not pass in data from the CRM, which happens to be Salesforce, about those offline sales that happen tied to a user. And again, to emphasize a previous point as well, the key concept here was having that user ID or unifying ID across different systems. Without that, the entire architecture would not have worked. But in the CRM Salesforce, we needed a user ID, which there was because it was user level records. In analytics, we needed a user ID, which we leveraged GA itself, how GA was tracking clients or customers as they come to the platforms. And even their phone tracking system, we would apply a user ID to everyone that would make a phone call to a specific number. And that unifying ID was how we could connect all these systems, have a data flow between them all, and then see 15% of offline conversions, offline sales could be tracked back to PPC or online advertising. And we can see that all in Google Analytics. Here's just a screenshot where you can see some of the campaigns that drove offline sales. So when there's some conversion that happened, if it came from the conversion happened offline, we can see which marketing campaign actually drove that offline conversion through this entire integration. Just to show one more example, and again, this might be a picture to take away as far as architecture goes, but this is just a sample of how the data could flow and the different technologies and where they might play in. So from an online marketing perspective, you might be doing some advertising, getting people to your website or mobile app. This is where Google Tag Manager or a tag management system comes into play to collect information and pass it to your analytics system. But at the same time, you might have your customer data or CMS or CRM, etc., feeding data to the website, again, to be tracked or collected by Tag Manager to pass to your analytics system. Or you might have your customer data sent directly to analytics via APIs and integrations in this regard. Once analytics has the information, then you can do different activities here. You can analyze, run models, visualize the data, or even send that data out from analytics to your email platform and or your marketing retargeting systems. Google AdWords, DoubleClick if you happen to be using Google Analytics, and personalize your message or retargeting that way. So again, it's not just one way. When you're thinking digital analytics architecture, we always think not just what can we collect, but what can we do with it? What actions can we drive from it? Or what personalization and marketing can be powered by this data that we're actually collecting? All the way down to now with Google Optimize, again, we're heavily biased on Google products, you can personalize the website experience when users come back according to what they've done before or information you might have about them. So in the case for Pelican Waters, as an example, if someone comes to the site, then calls a salesperson offline, makes a purchase, comes back to the site, knowing that that client made that purchase offline, but it was fed back to Google Analytics and then fed to Optimize, we could show accessories or supplementary products to what that one product was that they originally bought as upsell opportunities or to further engage them. You know, if they're coming back to the site, either there's an issue with the current product, which we hope not, or they're looking to enhance or continue buying and grow kind of the relationship or what they own. So giving them that personalized feel, knowing what they bought offline, it all comes from building this architecture, really understanding how do we want the data to flow and then what technology can get us there. Which I'm confident to say Google products have been innovating enough that they can build this process out completely. About 2 years ago, we wouldn't have had Data Studio or Optimize or even DoubleClick involved in this picture, so it wouldn't have been as robust or strong, but now there's a lot more capabilities. All right, so to wrap up the webinar, just to talk a little bit how to get started. If you've been to one of our webinars before, I'll be honest, it's the same slide that we've shown before on how to get started with any kind of analytics project, including digital analytics architecture. There's key items here: getting some alignment, understanding what you have, building some standards, resource allocation. You know, this is basic project management steps in sequence. We even have a guide that you can reference when we send out these slides over to you. But again, this is what we do with our clients and with our organizations that we work with. We help not only actually consult on the best process or best practice, but actually help implement. So we would build the implementation guide, we would test the architecture, deploy everything, make sure there's quality data and ongoing monitoring, and then train and enhance the organization that's using these data collections or these attributes that we've set up so that they can better make decisions and be data-driven in their decision-making. So this is our approach here, how we take the project management sequence of steps in the previous slide, but actually apply it to an analytics project. Architecture is the key component, the first thing that gets the rocket going in this particular image here. So this is the flow that we take, and we can help organizations at any level here. And I guess the last slide I want to show is a little bit more specific drill down into our approach as far as the sequence of steps or the stages that we take, from gathering requirements, understanding and building out the architecture, usually using GA or GTM, including doing an audit of pre-existing setup, to rollout, implementation, testing, validation, training, and insights. So I didn't see any questions or chats come in throughout, so I guess that means either I put everyone to sleep or everyone was so enthralled that they didn't have any questions to ask. But in any case, thank you so much for joining. Hopefully this was valuable for you, and of course, if you have any additional questions or you want any ongoing support or further conversations about what you're doing in your organization or building out a digital analytics architecture, feel free to reach out. I'm always looking and happy to have conversations about what is the best approach or best process for setting up analytics. So with that, I will hang around for about 2 more minutes, see if there's any additional questions that come in. But thanks again, everyone, for joining, and I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful week. Great, thanks so much. I see someone said the questions were answered during the presentation. Fantastic. Glad you guys were able to join and hopefully you found it valuable. For now, I'm going to pause the recording